Okay. Um, so for the event today, we're going to go ahead and just start off with a little bit of a welcome and some introductions. From there, we're going to talk primarily about our App Innovate program, what it is, a little bit about it, and why it's important, and then we'll go into some of the basics and the deliverables and what you can expect from it. After that, I have a few client stories that we can discuss, and then finally we'll go ahead and close with some Q&A. So in terms of introductions, my name is Ben Dewey. I'm our VP of Apps and Experiences at Tallan. We focus on kind of three core practice areas, myself being on the Apps and Experiences. We also have a group focused on data and analytics, as well as infrastructure and security. We all work very closely on these these solution assessments, and the application innovation and app modernization solution assessments are two that I work very closely with our team in delivering. So happy to talk to you guys about that today. So for those of you who don't know, the solution assessment is a program that's provided by Microsoft and is a funded engagement that allows them to really help any of their customers on their journey to the cloud, no matter where you are. So there's a number of different programs to help you, jump in exactly, at the time of your journey where it's most beneficial to help you in your next steps. The one we're talking about today is an application innovation, and that one's laser focused on really the applications and modernizing them for the cloud. Getting you into an optimal location where it meets your goals to have them deployed, whether that be in an IaaS environment or a platform as a service environment, all of those which we'll discuss in a little bit. We focus on up to 5 applications. We're really looking at your top mission critical applications and making sure that you have a plan for those to get them to a place where they're fully secured, they're high performance, and you have that redundancy as well as the disaster recovery needed to take those applications to the future and make sure that they are going to be able to help run your business or your government entity for the future to come. I like to start off with this slide. I think it's an important one to really kick off any conversation with people about the cloud. We traditionally used to build our applications on premises. That was, everything was our responsibility. You had to build for the largest amount of load. The big one you saw a lot in e-commerce was where companies would have to buy enough servers to support their Christmas holiday, but those would largely go unused throughout other times of the year. And in addition to that, they also had to maintain all the servers and all the switches and networking that were responsible to keep that equipment up and operational and running efficiently. In order to help really scale that out, infrastructure as a service came along, or IaaS, and this is really a way that customers could offload a lot of those down the trouble that they had managing the servers and the virtualization and the switches, and allow them to just focus on the things that are important to them. They had those machines, they could turn them on and off, scale them up and down with ease without having to bear a long-term cost of owning that equipment. Next up from that, and that's really the sweet spot that we're after with our application innovation, and that's the platform as a service. And that's where you get to just manage the application and the data, which are the things that you are that are most important to you and the things that you care about. Everything from the operating system and the runtime, having making sure you have your antivirus up to date and your Windows updates performed is all managed by the cloud provider. So all you have to do is just focus on the things that are important to you. The last one, and this does come up some in our application innovation, is software as a service. So if any of your applications are something that could be rebuilt and use another service, either a service that's provided by Microsoft or a third-party service, it allowed you to offload even the application code and some of the development logic that would be needed there. So that's another area. If we're talking about your email services, those types of things, those are all areas where you move more towards a software as a service model. So with all of our programs at Tallan, we really focus on the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework as a model that we use for our methodology for approaching projects. Each of those starts off with a bit of a vision and a roadmap. So looking at where you're at from a company and where you're trying to get to. So we try to highlight that, give a nice plan to really show the current state of where you're at and where your applications are at, and then focused on, where do you want to take them and the type of architecture you're going to be targeting going forward. Depending on, the difference between that vision and roadmap, you may or may not need to do a bit of a proof of concept to really prove out some of the technology, get the team comfortable with them, and get everybody familiar with how it's going to work and even tested. And then from there, we set up a foundation and start building out MVP applications, giving you guys something that you can start to use and see in the cloud and how it works. And from there, we focus on, getting all of the applications over, innovating and migrating applications as needed. And then we end all of our projects with a bit of operationalizing them, making sure that they're secured and they're governed properly, and you have all of the levers to kind of tighten down to what you need to make sure that it's going to have a sustainable life cycle out in the cloud. In order to kick off that process on our application side, we focus on our application innovation assessment. That's the solution assessment that I mentioned was provided by Microsoft. It has some funding available. We also do this program, in non-funded engagements all the time as well. And it allows us to really focus on, creating that vision, understanding kind of, what you have and how to build a roadmap around it. We also have a program called our App in 30, which allows us to build a proof of concept around your application. There are some funding options available for this one, either ESIF or AMP funding. If you talk with one of our reps, we'll be able to help you out and let you know if any of those funding mechanisms apply for this. But these two programs really kind of help kick off anybody's journey from an application perspective into the cloud. So if we go a little deeper into the application innovation, there's three main phases for this project. Our first one is focused around initial discovery meetings with you, understanding what you're trying to do, what kind of applications you're looking at. We often also do workshops with you to understand what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. As part of this, like I mentioned, there's up to 5 applications that we do a scan of and we do architecture around to help provide information on how to move that forward. We'll first work with you to identify all of your applications and really assess which of the 1 to 5 applications would be candidates for the actual deep dive into the modernization efforts and the future phases here. But we can also have another program that's called our application modernization that does a real deep dive in the portfolio. The application innovation allows us to look at that, but then let's just focus on the top 5 that between 1 to 5 that we really want to go deeper into. The last part in the analysis and planning phase is to actually run a scan of your application. We use a tool typically called Cloud Pilot, which allows us to do a static code analysis of your application and checks for things like session storage, authentication types, secure database information, any drive path access that might be happening if you're trying to manipulate anything on the machine, anything that would not properly function out in a platform as a service environment. So with that information, we move on to our second phase, which is where we focus on designing the architecture for your new future state application. So with that, we take your as-is architecture and we modify it in order to kind of move over the items in a mechanism that we've kind of discussed together through some working sessions as we're going through what's possible and what might be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. That becomes the design for our 2B architecture, and then from there, it's really about creating a roadmap to get you there. So there's 2 main areas that we focus on. One of them is going to be your actual Azure subscription, the cost of what it's going to take to get that application deployed and run on a monthly basis. And then we also focus on any sort of level of effort that would be required to either modify the code of those applications or potentially, re-architect or rebuild any code as part of, that modernization effort. So with those two those two kind of estimates, we move into our final phase, which is really reviewing the plan with you and helping you kind of provide the information to executives and leadership that you need in a digestible way for them. And then we focus around, really having a disposition for each of the applications. And you can see some of the examples there. But ideally, we're looking to either, retire an application, replace it with something else, maybe something that's a SaaS provider or a third-party off-the-shelf option. Migrating the app, which would be more just moving it to an infrastructure as a service or rehosting it. The modernizing is actually moving it to a platform as a service. So typically there are some code changes that would be needed as part of that. We also do a lot of recommendations on the modernization side around changing large, large backend processes to something more serverless or possibly an Azure batch approach. And then finally, the last two are kind of either rebuild it from scratch or build a new product altogether. So with that information, we present it to you and work with you to kind of help present it up to the leadership that you need and move into some sort of a post-engagement support mechanism. Typically, we're looking to either we're looking to help you to modernize those applications, but we have a number of different mechanisms that we'll work with customers on taking a piece of it or helping them with certain areas to help them to actually achieve that roadmap that we've laid out for them. In terms of the deliverables, we focus on the vision and roadmap side, really trying to lay out a bit of an executive summary as well as an as-is architecture, so you're able to see, that we understood exactly what you have and we've made sense of all your current infrastructure and how it's working. And we also provide a bit of a cloud adoption framework gap analysis, which is a survey that helps you identify kind of where you are with your cloud maturity and also helps guide you in terms of what your goals may be from an organization perspective. From there, we focus in again on the 2B architecture as well as the costs for the cloud, monthly recurring costs for consumption and licensing that may be needed. And then finally, focus in on a full plan for actually doing the modernization, that level of effort that would be required for that, and any additional services or support that you may needed that we've kind of mutually agreed upon as part of our conversation on how we could best help and provide any support as you go forward with your journey. So these next slides are some example deliverables that we have from the engagement. This one is the cost example that you would see as part of the code analysis. So there's a couple items on here that you will see. You can do a pay-as-you-go approach, which is going to be your most expensive option. There's also pay-as-you-go with an Azure hybrid benefit, which allows you to carry your licenses locally or carry your license over to the cloud and not have to repay for additional licenses. As you go up from there, there's different commits. There are 1 year, 3-year commits and beyond that if you know you're going to be using a set number of resources for a certain period of time, then you can get additional discounts as part of that. Finally, Tallan is a CSP, which is a cloud service provider. So we do offer resale capabilities for any of these plans if you don't have an enterprise agreement currently with Microsoft. In the event that you do, we certainly work with customers all the time and work with Microsoft on any sort of licensing related questions or cloud costs in that regard. This next slide is an example of our cloud pilot tool. This is a tool that is the static code analysis tool that I mentioned for when we scan our applications. There's 3 main graphs here on the bottom that are important to highlight. The first one is our app services readiness. That's the platform as a services approach, and really gives you an understanding for your application, how many changes or how many modifications you need to make in order to move it over to app services. The next one is container, and the final one is virtual machine. So virtual machine is going to be your infrastructure as a service, and container is more of a Docker's or a Kubernetes deployment, which allows you to have a little bit of cloud agnostic architecture as part of that. You also see up top here as part of the application effort, it provides an hourly estimate for the type of changes that would need to be made to your applications. Again, as part of our application modernization, we scan up to the 1 to 5. We certainly help you to scan as many applications as you have within your infrastructure. And it also might be interesting to share our application modernization program, which could help you do a full assessment of your portfolio if that's what you were looking for as well. So moving on from that, I wanted to just highlight a little bit of our our experience working in application modernization and cloud in general. One of our longest kind of running clients is the Massachusetts State Legislature. We've worked for over 10 years with them, supporting various application modernization efforts, from bill drafting to agenda management and their public website, getting information out to their constituents about the laws that are being passed and how they're being voted on and decisions are being made within the State House. The next two I was going to talk about, but Brian Sampson joined. I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to speak a little bit to some of these items. I'm happy to kind of let you take the floor and talk through the next two slides if you're available. But I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if he was available. So give me two. Okay. I'll speak a little bit to the Connecticut DPH one. Hopefully, it won't steal too much of Brian's thunder with that one. I know he worked very closely with the team on this project, but we worked closely with the Connecticut Department of Public Health on their data to care for their surveillance program. Before we came in, there was a lot of manual paperwork around their lab processing in order to get information out to patients. Sometimes patients that didn't even know that they had tested positive potentially. And the lab paperwork, given all the paper process and the backlog of queues, could take up to a month to get the information out and get it ultimately in the hands of the people that could communicate out to the public and help to stop any spread. After we worked with them to help consolidate some of their information, work on scanning technologies to get the paper process eliminated, and get the data to a proper data source that it could be remediated and improved in a more efficient way. We brought that time down significantly, and we're able to get that information out to the people that needed it much sooner than we had prior. I'm not sure if I killed the 2 minutes there for Brian or not.
But... No, that was actually, you did a great characterization of that. The one thing that I will correct is that there was as much as a 3-month delay.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. And then anything else just about the process that you wanted to share, Brian, in terms of just I know we scanned it with the OCR technology, brought it into a data source, and created an interface for them to have a patient, a centralized patient profile.
Yeah, there's various platforms at play. Internal systems that were homegrown by the Connecticut Department of Public Health, the eHRS system that the CDC provides, as well as a litany of external partner systems like LexisNexis, National Death Index, Department of Corrections. So the idea was to collect all of this data, create one centralized person view of all these data sources. And through the Data to Care initiative, certain events that were characterized by, say, a person falling out of care or newly diagnosed, prioritize that for the workload of the caseworkers to go and intervene with the folks in the field, the people who need care, and get them back into care or newly get them into care, and thereby prevent and stop the forward transmission of HIV.
Thank you. And actually, the next one is on our data-driven work that we did to help support COVID relief and the Washington Department of Health. I know, Brian, you worked very closely with that. Do you want to speak a little bit to this project?
Yeah, I can speak to this one as well. So with the COVID pandemic, this kind of speaks to Ben's infrastructure as a service and platform as a service components equally, because the initial effort to deal with the pandemic was we need more scale. The volume of labs coming in, the volume of data being processed, it wasn't possible given the on-prem infrastructure. So there was a very rapid lift and shift of all of that infrastructure into Azure, just to give the overhead and the breathing room to push the data through as quickly as it needed to. That said, there was a ton of manual effort. There was hundreds of epidemiologists working. The team ramped up to 300 epidemiologists just to deal with the manual processes and data flow. So they needed a solution that was leveraging platform services, a data-driven analytics solution. So for them, we built a cloud-based modern data estate, kind of integrating all of their various COVID data sources, from contact tracing to the lab records to case management and immunization later on when that came through. Again, giving you a centralized view of all of that data for analytics and reporting, and kind of enabled, very similar to Connecticut, albeit in a different space, still infectious disease, but COVID rather than HIV, modernizing business processes and eliminating manual workflows and giving them an opportunity to reduce error and more quickly and efficiently process what they were doing by bringing to bear the platform technology tools that enable that.
Great. Thank you, Brian. So in order to get started, I think, at Tallan, we're all more than happy to kind of field any questions that you may have about our application innovation solution assessment, as well as any of our programs. You can contact me directly if you want. My email is there on the screen, or any of the Tallan folks that you may be in contact with. You can also contact any of your Microsoft reps. They're all very familiar with the solution assessment program. They can help get you in touch with one of the partners like Tallan to help with that opportunity. So we certainly look forward to helping in any way possible. And with that, I'll kind of wrap up, and I'll provide an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions that you may have, either about the